Welcome, welcome. All right. Is Alex coming? All right. I'll kick things off. How's everyone doing? Having a good ETHDenver? Hello. Um, so my name is Devin Finzer. I am one of the founders of OpenSea. So I wanted to ask a few quick questions to kind of get a read on what people already know about NFTs. Who here owns an NFT? Okay, so majority of people. Who here has deployed an NFT contract? Okay, a good number of people. Nice. Okay, awesome. So this talk will hopefully be hopefully be interesting. I'll talk about kind of what has happened in the NFT space over the last couple years since CryptoKitties launched. So kind of a little bit of a history. Maybe some things will be, if you've already deployed an NFT contract, you might be familiar with this stuff already, but maybe I'll talk a little bit about some of the intricacies of NFTs and what makes them a little trickier than just regular tokens, but also what makes them interesting and I think pretty exciting. I think we're kind of just in the very early stages of exploring the design space for non-fungible tokens, whereas we're in sort of, I mean, still early, but slightly later stages of exploring the design space of fungible tokens. So the overview, I'm not sure like how far we'll get into the workshop, since there's not that many people here with computers. But if we do get into that, we'll sort of learn how to build a tradable, collectible conference ticket using an NFT. That's kind of one of the goals of the workshop. Yeah. But first, I just wanted to talk about what is an NFT for folks who aren't familiar with it. So fungible tokens are currencies or things that are interchangeable. So you can think of Bitcoin as an example of this, lumber is sort of another example of this, credit card points, airline points. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum are things that are not interchangeable with each other. Most things in our day-to-day lives are non-fungible. They're typically relatively unique, and there's not sort of a order book-based exchange for them. However, fungibility is relative, so there are things that are fungible within a class of things, right? So event tickets for the same event are kind of fungible with one another, or a shirt of the same type is relatively fungible with another. So we'll talk about the implications for that for writing non-fungible token smart contracts. A little history of ERC 721. So ERC 721 is the standard that is used to represent most non-fungible tokens on Ethereum today. Who here has heard of CryptoPunks? Okay, so a good number of people. CryptoPunks was actually the first non-fungible token on the Ethereum network. I think technically it was. And basically what CryptoPunks was you owned this collectible item, and they didn't build a standard around it. So you could think of it as just a smart contract that said, this user owns this thing, which is called a CryptoPunk, and then some metadata about that CryptoPunk that was actually stored on chain. CryptoKitties, of course, took this to the next level, and they created this game where the cats inside of the game were non-fungible tokens, and there was actually some sophisticated logic around how these things got created. It was through a breeding mechanic, and of course we had this kind of explosion and excitement in late 2017. We witnessed the CryptoKitties bubble, where these cats were selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then everything kind of came to a crash, and people realized that there wasn't really a good reason to buy cats for that amount of money. That being said, CryptoKitties inspired, for a lot of people, inspired sort of excitement around what other sorts of assets could be built on using non-fungible tokens. So there were sort of the CryptoKitties clones, people who looked at CryptoKitties and said, let's build another game, another breeding game, and maybe people will buy these things because they're on blockchains. That you know, some people were interested in that, but it was a much smaller group of people than the people who played CryptoKitties. But in mid-2018, there started to be real companies, sort of within crypto and outside of crypto, that got interested in like these types of assets. So the MLB actually partnered with a gaming company that launched a game around the MLB IP. And then above MLB is a game called Gods Unchained, which is a trading card game that's built on top of NFT technology. And in 2019, actually, this slide isn't fully updated, but we're seeing a lot of growth of the space. Formula One came on recently and launched a trading card, or sorry, car game, and just a lot of really exciting things happening in the NFT space. This is a graph of the number of NFT contracts deployed on the Ethereum network. It is cumulative, so it's definitely gonna go up. But you can see that there's a lot of early activity, right? So this only goes up to December of 2019, but you know, people are iterating on this and deploying lots of new experiments and ideas. Here's another chart. So this shows the overlap between owners of different NFTs. So for one, this chart kind of demonstrates that there's now a broad set of asset classes that are represented as NFTs. You can see things like digital art, domain names, obviously games, collectibles, sort of miscellaneous things that it's unclear whether they're a game or just kind of a experience of some sort. But you can see that CryptoKitties kind of has the broadest ownership distribution. And you know, a lot of people played CryptoKitties and then never came back. But there are these sort of pockets developing between, especially in the art community, in these sort of virtual worlds with NFT-based land, that is sort of attracting a new set of enthusiasts in this early technology. So a little bit about our company, OpenSea. So we're a marketplace for, or who here has heard of OpenSea before? Okay, so a good chunk of you have heard of it. So we're a marketplace for all of these types of items. We allow games to instantly spin up a marketplace where users can buy and sell an NFT as long as it conforms to either the ERC 721 or ERC 1155 standard. The NFT market has grown significantly, so we do around $1 million per month of volume. And we also provide an API that makes it easy to grab collectibles from the network and display them to users. So if you've ever used Coinbase Wallet, Trust Wallet, Opera Wallet, and you can kind of go in the wallet and see your collectibles, that's using the OpenSea API. Our trades are wallet to wallet, meaning that you can sell items directly from your account instead of having to escrow them, either in a smart contract or in a centralized exchange. What's interesting about the non-fungible token space is there aren't actually really any centralized exchanges or centralized marketplaces. In cryptocurrencies, of course, we have a plethora of very lucrative crypto exchanges, obviously Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, all of these. In the NFT world, it seems that we're taking a slightly more decentralized first approach and building decentralized exchanges from the get-go. We support eBay-style bidding. So this is a car that was sold for 415 ETH, and it was done through what's called an English auction, which is the kind of auction you see on eBay where you have bidders and then the item is sold automatically to the highest bidder. So I think the most relevant piece of this talk for all of you is sort of what can you do with OpenSea. The OpenSea is really a tool for you to build marketplace functionality for all of your many NFT ideas. So instead of having to sort of build everything from the grounds up, you get an instant marketplace for all of your items. You get all of these kind of interesting features for auctioning things off. You can customize it. And then interestingly enough, you can actually set your fees for when things sell. So if an item sells on OpenSea, you can take a cut of that secondary sale. So this is something that is allowing a lot of game developers to monetize the secondary market. But I guess why would you want to build a non-fungible asset on a blockchain? We've had digital assets for a really long time. So why? Was that something that I did? Oh, sorry. Okay. So why use a blockchain to build these things? We've had game items, we've had event tickets, domain names, all of these digital assets since the dawn of the internet, but what does blockchain sort of bring to these things? I would argue that it's essentially, it's a lot of what we've talked about, the difference between closed economies and open economies. So with centralized digital assets, of course, we do have really big gaming companies. Fortnite makes billions of dollars selling skins. We are familiar with how they work. The UX is smooth. Users are familiar with these like login-based systems, so they work decently well. But we also know that closed economies are inefficient, and sort of locking your economy, preventing exports, preventing imports, sort of having to manage all of the supply of resources can be very difficult, and ultimately results in a smaller economy than what could be had with an open economy. So blockchain-based digital assets allow us to transition to an open economy where you don't necessarily need to control everything, and you can rely on these open markets for a lot of the economic efficiency, and essentially that leads to really interesting experiences. Of course, the problem is that this market's really small right now. It has, the UX is lacking, but it's gradually improving, and you do lose a lot of control, right? Your assets can kind of move across different types of ecosystems, and for some folks that could be worrisome. So how can you use OpenSea for your dApp? Well, we talked a little bit about this, but here's a slide on our tools. This is the Formula One Delta Time marketplace. It's essentially a sort of white-labeled marketplace experience that has powered the initial sales of this particular game. I think I talked about this already. And let me skip ahead a little bit. Yeah, so to kind of demonstrate why this stuff is interesting, has anyone here heard of CryptoVoxels? Okay, so a fewer hands than other projects. CryptoVoxels is a virtual world where you can own land in this world and build experiences on top of it. It started in, I think, early 2018. It was a single developer at the time. And he basically came on to the Ethereum network and said, I'm going to tokenize this virtual land, and I'll just go and sell it on OpenSea. And if anyone buys it, they can build stuff on top of it. So this is the world right now. Actually, this might be an outdated screenshot, but as you can see, it's grown significantly. So there's a lot of really interesting areas of this, and the market for land has actually approached, actually I think it's over 4,000 ETH of volume today. This is from a single developer, and he's actually been able to build a business just by selling this virtual land, and also taking a commission from secondary trades on the market. And then the things you can do inside of this virtual world are actually pretty interesting. So You can build museums of your CryptoKitties or really any NFT. So this is a CryptoKitties museum that someone has built inside of CryptoVoxels, and those are actual CryptoKitties that that particular user owns. This is a recent project called Meta Factory. I don't fully understand all of the things they're doing. It's part of the Meta Cartel project, but they, I believe, are tokenizing physical assets as NFTs, and they have but I think they come along with wearables inside of the CryptoVoxels universe. Oh yeah? Yeah. Yeah, so what's cool is that you can imagine, say these folks or maybe even a bigger brand tokenizes their physical asset. You could show off your physical asset inside of a virtual world, and you would have as long as there's definitely some trust involved in the custody of that physical asset and all that, but you could imagine showing off physical assets inside of virtual worlds, which is pretty interesting. Then there's the Ethereum name service. So this is, I think, one of the most exciting non-game assets. The Ethereum name service, for folks who aren't familiar, are essentially domain names that are decentralized native. So at a basic level, Ethereum name service names provide a mapping or a way to send to a human readable address, such as alice.eth, without having to use a hexadecimal address. And of course, these are tradable NFTs. So we partnered with the Ethereum name service and sold around $1 million worth of short names. So these are the 3 to 6 character ENS names. And the secondary market is also starting to become pretty interesting for these names. As a special announcement, we're partnering with a company called .cred to issue domain names that are both ENS and DNS compatible. So what this means is that if you own a .cred domain name, you can send Ether to alice.cred if you own alice.cred, but you can also host a website on alice.cred, and you could go and sell your domain name on OpenSea versus having to go through GoDaddy or whatever other auction sites. And I don't know if any of you have done that, but it's not always the easiest process. It's not kind of interoperable native. So that's coming up on March 20th and should be a pretty exciting sale. As another example of why NFTs are interesting, so this is a project called Decentraland, and they decided to issue wearables. CryptoVoxels has this as well, but Decentralands are, in my opinion, a little nicer looking. And these wearables, of course, can be traded on open markets. They are traded in the Mana currency. And you can customize your avatar with these wearables. So this is my avatar, and I bought that pumpkin head for 85 mana, and it was worth every penny. And I also bought those strange pants. Social tokens are kind of a new phenomena that are intersecting with the NFT space as well. Who here has heard of social tokens? Okay, yeah. So I think they're becoming pretty hot in the crypto Twitter sphere. So social tokens interoperate with NFTs. So this is an artist named Connie Digital who issued a work of art. I guess it's some sort of floppy disk, and listed it inside. I actually believe it's a he, although they're anonymous, in his social currency called Hue. So you can see there that it's on sale for 40,000 Hue, and you can imagine these currencies being things that you earn, and then you can redeem different types of NFTs natively on marketplaces. All right, so now I'll just dive into kind of the workshop. I don't think we have time to actually have people necessarily write code or follow directly along, but this will give you a sense of what it takes to actually build a NFT and deploy it. So first things first is sort of what is the NFT contract actually representing. So if you've delved into the inner workings of ERC20, you know that ERC20 is actually a really simple contract. It just maps these addresses to balances of how many, it says how many coins does this address own. Now, ERC 721 is a little bit more sophisticated. It basically has these unique token IDs. In the case of CryptoKitties, for example, you would have kitty number 1 or kitty number 2. And it says this address owns this particular CryptoKitty. And so that's sort of the record of ownership that it maintains. Now, things get pretty interesting when we talk about something like ERC 1155, which is an upcoming, or it's a available standard, but it's a little bit newer, and in my opinion, actually has some really interesting benefits. So, 1155, who here has heard of 1155? Okay, so some folks. So 1155 actually combines, in some ways, the best of both worlds. It basically sort of considers that there are actually assets that are roughly the same as each other. So for example, imagine a fighting game where you have golden swords or something. And really those golden swords, you could identify them as golden sword number 1, golden sword number 2, golden sword number 3, but they're really actually kind of interchangeable. And you could save a lot of space and make things a lot simpler by just saying this user owns 20 swords, this user owns 30 swords, and then have a separate class for shields and say, this user owns 5 shields. What this allows you to do is actually kind of merge together the fungibility of something like ERC20 with whatever kind of non-fungibility you need with ERC 721 all together in one contract. So what's nice about ERC 1155 is the functionality is a superset of 721. If you want unique items, just create a new class, a new type of shield. But if you want some degree of fungibility within classes of items, you can have that too. So I think it'll be interesting to see other chains, how they decide to architect these smart contracts with some of the learnings from the Ethereum chain. I know Tezos, for example, is considering just having the 1155 standard and not even really having a token standard, just because 1155 can kind of encapsulate all of these various use cases. So this is what the ERC 721 contract interface actually looks like. So as mentioned in the previous slide, the main method is kind of looking up what user owns what token. So that's the owner of function. And then the other kind of important asset here, important method here is the transfer method, which allows you to transfer a token from one user to another. And that's pretty much, all this other stuff is kind of fluff in a way. Really, the checking ownership and transferring are kind of the bread and butter of what makes a non-fungible token. The thing that a lot of people don't fully understand about ERC 721 is, so you have these unique token IDs, but how do you actually represent, so you have kitty number 2, but if OpenSea is going to go and display kitty number 2, how does that actually know what stuff to show? How does it know what the kitty actually looks like, right? So that's where the token metadata standard comes into play. The token metadata standard is essentially a way for the token to tell someone who's reading the smart contract what data is associated with this token, and it does it through a URL. So this URL, so this method here takes in a token ID, returns a URI, and that URI just returns a bunch of JSON. This URI can be a IPFS hash, it can be a centralized server, it can, yeah, those are basically the only things it can be, unless there's some other file storage service. I guess it could be like an S3 thing. But this basically allows us to map these metadata things to the actual look and feel on something like a marketplace, right, or some other application. So here we have in the upper right corner the contract. It's returning a URL which returns metadata, and then we ingest that metadata and display it on OpenSea. And we've actually, at OpenSea, we've extended the metadata standard. So if you want cool looking properties like googly and jelly, you can add those. Or if you want rankings, you can add that. And we have a bunch of kind of interesting things you can play around with, like dates, boosts, and stuff like that. And then, of course, this is what actually allows these assets to be available inside a virtual world. So the fact that you can look up that metadata, in this case, this CryptoVoxels developer decided to use our API to grab all of the data for a particular asset, but they didn't necessarily have to use our API. They could go and get it from the chain and display it inside of a virtual world. So that's kind of the underlying mechanics of how these things actually interoperate. So I think that's the wrong. Oh, anyway, there's a starter repo, but we can not go through that. I thought I had a slide. Well, yeah, I guess I must have forgotten this slide, but I had a slide on. There's a conference on February 20th in New York City for anyone who lives in New York, and I wanted to give everyone here a promo code. The promo code is ETHDenver, and the conference is called NFT NYC. It will feature a lot of people who are building interesting NFT projects, and if you're kind of looking to get deeper into the space, it's a pretty good way to do that. I think I'm actually right on at the end of the time, but happy to take any questions.
Yeah, actually,
people might have.
You are right at the end, so you'll be here all weekend, right?
Yeah, I'll be here all weekend.
So people can come up to you and ask all the questions they need.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you.